Long before Tesla lit up the world with wireless power, another mind had already cracked the code, and history nearly erased him. This is the story of the forgotten genius who beat Tesla to the future. You've heard of Nikola Tesla, the man behind wireless electricity and revolutionary ideas. But what if we told you that decades before Tesla, another brilliant mind laid the foundation for wireless power, and history barely remembers his name? Meet Heinrich Rudolf Hertz, the physicist who first proved the existence of electromagnetic waves, essentially unlocking the science behind everything from radio signals to modern wireless charging. Yet despite his groundbreaking discoveries, Hertz remains a quiet footnote in textbooks, overshadowed by the very technologies he helped birth. Why did the world forget him? And how close did he come to changing the future before Tesla ever stepped into the spotlight? In this video, we're diving into the untold story of a man whose invisible waves shaped our world, even if history chose not to remember him. Born in 1857 in Hamburg, Germany, Heinrich Rudolf Hertz grew up in a world on the brink of a scientific revolution. From an early age, it was clear that Hertz wasn't like other children. While his peers played, he was dismantling clocks, sketching machines, and absorbing every book he could find on physics and engineering. His family, well off and supportive, encouraged his curiosity, even when his experiments occasionally got out of hand. By his teenage years, Hertz had already shown a remarkable aptitude for science and mathematics. He wasn't just memorizing formulas, he was questioning them, poking holes in what was accepted, and trying to see the world through raw logic and experimentation. Teachers often remarked that his mind moved faster than the classroom could follow. After briefly studying engineering, Hertz decided to pursue his true passion, theoretical physics. He enrolled at the University of Berlin, where he studied under some of the greatest scientific minds of the time, including Gustav Kirchhoff and Hermann von Helmholtz. It was here that Hertz's potential exploded. Helmholtz quickly recognized the young student's brilliance and became both his mentor and strongest supporter. What set Hertz apart wasn't just intelligence, it was the way he thought. He didn't chase fame or fortune. He wasn't looking to invent flashy devices or build a public name. He was a pure scientist, obsessed with discovering why things worked, not just how. By his mid-20s, Hertz was already conducting advanced experiments in electromagnetism, long before it became mainstream. While many around him still clung to the idea that invisible forces were unmeasurable or mystical, Hertz believed they could be tested, observed, and proven. And that belief would lead him to one of the most important discoveries in modern physics, the very existence of electromagnetic waves. Little did he know, this quiet work in a lab would open the door to technologies the world hadn't even imagined yet, and that others would one day be credited for. In the late 1880s, while most of the world was still trying to understand how electricity could light a bulb, Heinrich Hertz was already thinking about something more radical: transmitting energy without wires. Working in a modest lab at the Karlsruhe Polytechnic, Hertz began experimenting with a strange theory that came from James Clerk Maxwell: the idea that electromagnetic waves could travel through empty space, much like ripples on water. Most scientists at the time dismissed this as a mathematical fantasy, but Hertz was determined to prove it was real. He set up a now legendary experiment: two simple pieces of wire, one acting as a transmitter, the other as a receiver, separated by a few feet. He charged the transmitter with a spark and watched, almost in disbelief, as a tiny spark leaped across the receiver without any physical connection. Electricity had jumped through the air. Let that sink in. Decades before smartphones and wireless chargers, Hertz had already demonstrated that energy could move invisibly through space. No wires, no contact, just waves. To make this even more powerful, in a time when horses still pulled carts in most cities, Hertz had discovered the invisible highway on which future technology would one day race. But he didn't stop there. Through painstaking experiments, he showed that these waves could reflect off surfaces, bend around obstacles, and even be focused, just like light. In essence, he proved that electromagnetic waves behaved like real physical phenomena, not just equations on paper. His waves weren't just theory, they were measurable, repeatable, and unstoppable. Think about what that means in today's world. Every time you charge your phone wirelessly, stream music through Bluetooth, or connect to Wi-Fi, you're using the very principle Hertz uncovered. He was the first human being to physically detect and control these invisible forces. At the time, though, most people didn't understand the implications. Even Hertz himself was humble about the possibilities. He once said, "It's of no use whatsoever," when asked about the practical applications of his discovery. But history would prove him wrong. His invisible sparks would become the foundation for radio, television, radar, and eventually, the wireless world we live in today. What's even more astonishing is that this all happened before Nikola Tesla began his own wireless power experiments. Tesla's name would later become synonymous with bold innovation and futuristic thinking. But behind his success was a silent pioneer, a man who had already proven that the invisible could be real and the impossible could be measured. Hertz didn't build giant coils or put on dramatic demonstrations. He didn't care for patents or profits. His lab was his world, and discovery was his goal. Yet his quiet breakthrough marked the true beginning of the wireless age, even if the credit didn't follow. In short, Hertz gave the world the blueprint. Tesla turned it into a show. But without that first spark in a quiet German lab, none of it might have happened. Despite Heinrich Hertz's groundbreaking work, his path was anything but smooth. While his experiments would one day reshape the world in his own time, they were met with silence, skepticism, and even mockery. In the conservative scientific circles of 19th century Europe, many dismissed the idea of energy traveling through empty space as pseudoscience. Some called it invisible nonsense. Hertz wasn't a showman. He didn't dress up his discoveries with theatrical demonstrations or dramatic claims like Tesla would later do. He simply presented cold, hard evidence. But ironically, that quiet confidence worked against him. Without flashy results or immediate applications, many saw his work as interesting, but useless. Even his own modesty contributed to the lack of recognition. When praised, Hertz often shrugged and said his experiments were just verification of Maxwell's theory. He didn't fight for attention or push to commercialize his findings. As a result, funding was scarce, and support from institutions was minimal. He wasn't a priority in a world still struggling to understand wired electricity, let alone wireless. Worse, Hertz faced institutional barriers. Universities at the time were slow to embrace new ideas. Many clung to outdated models of physics, and departments often avoided research that couldn't be immediately applied to industry or warfare. Wireless energy seemed like science fiction. Interesting? Yes, but not serious science. This lack of support weighed heavily on him. Imagine making a discovery that could shape the entire future, and no one seems to care. That quiet emotional toll is something history rarely records. Behind the formal lectures and published papers was a man trying to show the world a future it simply wasn't ready to see. And time was not on his side. Hertz's health began to deteriorate in his early 30s. As his strength faded, so did his chances to push his work further or win the recognition he deserved. He died at just 36 years old, never knowing that the very waves he discovered would one day carry voices, music, and data across the planet. When most people think of wireless power, the name Nikola Tesla immediately comes to mind. And for good reason. Tesla was a visionary who turned the concept into a spectacle, building massive coils that shot bolts of electricity through the air, lighting lamps without wires, and dreaming of powering the world without a single transmission line. But what few realize is that Tesla stood on the shoulders of Heinrich Hertz. Tesla openly acknowledged the importance of Hertz's experiments. Without Hertz's proof that electromagnetic waves could travel through space, Tesla would have had no scientific foundation for his wireless dreams. While Hertz was driven by pure science, Tesla was driven by application. He wanted to electrify cities, transmit power across continents, and revolutionize communication. The two men were remarkably different. Hertz was the quiet theorist, working in labs, publishing careful papers. Tesla was the showman engineer, captivating crowds with lightning and vision. But their goals overlapped in one essential way. They both believed that energy could flow freely through the air, unbound by wires. Hertz proved it was possible. Tesla tried to make it practical. Sadly, because Hertz died young and Tesla lived on to wow the world with his grand experiments, public memory tilted in Tesla's favor. Over time, Hertz became the forgotten father of wireless technology, a silent architect of the future. But history, when examined closely, tells the truth. Tesla may have made it shine, but Hertz lit the very first spark. Heinrich Hertz died in 1894 at the tragically young age of 36. His death came just as the world was beginning to understand the power of what he had discovered. Buried quietly in Bonn, Germany, Hertz never lived to see how his invisible waves would change the course of human history. So why is he not a household name? Part of it is timing. He wasn't around to defend his ideas, to expand them, or to inspire the public imagination. Unlike Tesla, he didn't build massive towers or chase global fame. He didn't seek patents or try to profit from his discoveries. His focus was pure science, and history, as it often does, tends to forget those who didn't fight for the spotlight. But make no mistake, Hertz's legacy surrounds us every single day. Every time you connect to Wi-Fi, stream a movie on your phone, charge your device without a cord, or hear a voice on the radio, you're using the waveforms he proved existed. The entire wireless world, from Bluetooth to satellite communication, stands on the foundation he built. His name does live on in one critical place, the unit of frequency. Every time we say kilohertz, megahertz, or gigahertz, we're honor